Take a look at those around you. The majority of individuals on this planet are already beaten, and the saddest thing is they are still unaware of it. Each morning they rise, bearing unseen shackles, shackles forged from the judgments of others, unregulated feelings, and a mind that acts before it ever reflects. Some label this as humanity. I see it as surrender with never a conflict waged. And that represents the most perilous form of failure. The type you never anticipate, the type that seems perfectly ordinary because all those near you endure the same experience. Machiavelli composed The Prince not as a philosophical drill. He crafted it as a detached, precise dissection of human essence. He illustrates how authority genuinely functions, how individuals actually decline, and crucially, how the uncommon few ascend beyond turmoil and become invulnerable. His initial and harshest insight was straightforward. The world doesn't compensate those who are emotional. It compensates those who are disciplined. Not the noisiest person present, but the most collected. Not the most intense, but the most accurate. Not the most urgently needy, but the most intentional. Authority has never honored emotions. Authority honors self-control, planning, and the frightening tranquility of an individual who cannot be disturbed. This is what remains unspoken. You were not inherently feeble. You were deliberately shaped to be fragile, gradually and methodically. You were trained to pursue approval, to respond without thought, to crumble beneath strain, and to confuse turbulent feelings for genuine personality. That conditioning is deeply embedded, yet it can be shattered. The upcoming words are not meant to inspire, inspiration is fleeting. This is structural redesign, a full overhaul of how your psyche functions during stress, during agony, and during authority. Dispassionate, purposeful, unmovable. The query remains, are you prepared to be reconstructed? Number 2, the emotional snare. Reasons, emotions serve as tools turned against you. Allow me to share a truth that will transform how you perceive each exchange you've ever experienced. Your feelings do not define who you are. They do not constitute your power. In an unsuitable setting, with malicious individuals, your emotions become the most accurate and lethal armament that can be employed against you. And the most hazardous aspect, most individuals deliver that armament freely on a daily basis, never understanding their action. Each occasion, you respond with fury. You reveal to your adversary precisely where to attack. Each instance, you succumb under stress. You present your fragility on a golden tray as often as you crave affirmation. With such intensity that you sense it physically, you have already forfeited the discussion prior to its start. Machiavelli recognized a truth that contemporary culture vigorously attempts to conceal. Feelings, when not disciplined, are fetters attractive, persuasive, profoundly human fetters, yet still fetters. The individual who can be agitated can be governed. The individual who craves approval can be wielded. The individual who dreads losing will base every choice on a state of panic, and panic has never generated a successful plan. This is not an invitation to become callous or empty. This is an appeal to achieve self-rule, to experience all emotions while being dominated by none. There exists an enormous gap between someone who undergoes feelings and someone who is devoured by them. One possesses strength, the other is a marionette. Reflect on each instant in your existence when feelings overrode reasoning, each bond you shattered during an instance of anger, every chance you gave up because anxiety seemed more potent than aspiration. Each time an individual triggered you a precisely timed remark, an intentional insult, a measured taunt, you performed precisely as they expected. That wasn't a lack of courage. What you lacked was a mental framework. You had no inner structure to take the hit and channel the force. You were a raw nerve, vulnerable, reactive, and entirely foreseeable. A genuinely strong man isn't someone who is emotionless. He is someone who experiences the turmoil yet remains utterly calm within it. Amidst it, he analyzes, watches, and makes choices from a standpoint of cool rationality instead of fiery disorder. His feelings move through him as weather moves over mountains. The mountain never pursues the storm, it just stays. Unshaken, unaltered, unconquered, that's the benchmark we're aiming for. If this resonates with you, type, I feel nothing, I control everything in the comments. Show the world that you are not a puppet anymore. You requested a 450-word paragraph next. Section 3. The Silent War. Your brain can be your strongest asset or your most dangerous foe. A conflict is taking place this very moment. It isn't in public squares, corporate offices, or among countries, militaries, or belief systems. The most significant battle ever waged is occurring silently within the space between your ears, and the majority of people are losing it disastrously. Day after day, they surrender to distractions. They give in to uncertainty, to the constant overwhelming clamor of a world engineered to disrupt their concentration, hijack their attention, and to keep you perpetually fragmented so you never gather sufficient mental sharpness to recognize your true capability. This isn't paranoia, it's deliberate design. Society benefits from your lack of focus. Your vulnerability is another person's source of income. Your bewilderment becomes their means of control. Once you grasp this fully, profoundly, your entire viewpoint shifts. Machiavelli noted that a prudent man must embody both the lion and the fox. The lion to destroy obstacles in his path, the fox to maneuver through what force cannot overcome. However, before you can become either, before you can exert influence externally in any significant way, you need to first master your internal domain. An undisciplined mind doesn't serve as a weapon. It becomes a disadvantage. It's a battleground where opponents don't even have to appear, since you're already defeating yourself from within. Self-doubt is a killer that requires no invitation. Overanalyzing is a jail cell without any walls. And that mental fragility, that gradual erosion of your ability to maintain focus, composure, and direction when under stress, that is the silent destroyer of far more potential than failure alone. This is the harsh reality that distinguishes the strong from the weak. Your thoughts aren't arbitrary. They are ingrained habits and routines. Deeply etched neural circuits formed through repetition, surroundings, and the narratives you've adopted about yourself without ever challenging where they came from. A person who operates from a scarcity mindset will always behave accordingly. Someone who thinks he's just one choice away from ruin will always decide from a state of near panic. Yet the one who has conditioned his mind methodically, mercilessly, without emotion, he has practiced responding with clarity amid turmoil, with calmness under duress, with strategy when provoked. That individual functions on an entirely distinct level from those around him. He isn't necessarily smarter or luckier. He is simply more internally structured than what the average person permits themselves to be. That is the true birthplace of mental strength. It isn't found in the gym or the highlight reel. Not during times when everything flows flawlessly and self-discipline comes effortlessly. It emerges from the dark, silent, and unglamorous inner battle you wage against yourself. At 3 a.m., with nobody watching, when giving up seems sensible and doubts appear justified. And when every vulnerable part of you cries out to give in, the man who consistently, repeatedly conquers that moment without any ovation becomes truly unassailable in every domain that counts. Discipline the mind first, everything else falls into place. Point 4. Emotional composure. The most formidable asset you can own. Let me describe a scenario for you. Two men enter an identical high-stakes scenario. The risks are the same, the adversary is the same, the conditions are the same. Yet one man enters with a tight chest, clenched jaw, frantic thoughts, and an ego already wounded before any words are exchanged. The other man enters as if the room is his own, not through arrogance or theatricality, but through a quality so uncommon and silently intimidating that the whole atmosphere transforms the instant he steps in. That quality isn't confidence as usually understood. It's not charm, status, riches, or physical stature. It is emotional serenity, profound, unyielding, nearly superhuman stillness that conveys a single message to everyone present without uttering a word. This man is immovable, and anyone immovable cannot be manipulated, provoked, or psychologically defeated. He has already triumphed before the contest starts. Machiavelli knew that the mere appearance of composure was a form of dominance in itself. However, what most individuals overlook, and what superficial students of power consistently misunderstand, is that genuine composure isn't an act. You cannot simulate inner stillness at the core. You cannot produce calm under real pressure without constructing it stone by conscious stone through the consistent practice of resisting impulsive reactions, especially when every nerve in your body urges you to do precisely that. True emotional composure isn't the lack of emotion. Repeat that to yourself and truly absorb it. It isn't numbness. It is not disconnection. It is the ultimate command of experiencing everything completely and deciding with cool, regal exactness how to react. The timing of your response, and even whether you respond at all, that decision, that split-second interval between trigger and reaction, is where your strength resides. Defend it with all your might. Consider what being emotionally reactive has cost you. Be brutally truthful with yourself at this moment, because this platform isn't for comforting falsehoods. Reflect on the relationships harmed by words shot in fury that you can never entirely take back. Think about the chances that vanished because you allowed frustration to overpower strategy. Remember the spaces where you lost credibility the instant your voice trembled, your calm faltered, or your neediness showed, and people were already scanning for that exact crack. Each of those instances shared a common origin. Your inner condition was being controlled by outer circumstances. You were living from the outside in rather than from the inside out. Anyone who derives their identity from external circumstances remains enslaved by them, regardless of outward accomplishments. Both the Stoics and Machiavelli drew from that same harsh well of insight, recognizing that you control nothing. Beyond your own thoughts and responses, everything in this world is mutable. All else is transient, subject to being removed, altered, or destroyed by forces you cannot influence. However, your inner state, your emotional framework, your capacity to stay centered amid any upheaval life creates belongs entirely and exclusively to you. Nobody can access it without your consent, and no situation can breach it unless you open the door yourself. Once you truly internalize this truth, not as an inspirational concept, but as a lived, daily practice, you stop being a victim of your life and become its sovereign architect. Calmness is not passive. Calmness is the most assertive strategic advantage a human being can possess. Develop it, protect it, never apologize for it. If that statement rewired something inside you, now type, "My calm is my power," in the comments. Mean it when you write it. Number 5, unwavering focus. How to stay locked in while the world around you is in flames. Focus is not a gift. Let me dismantle that comforting myth right now before it costs you another year of your life. Focus is not something you are born with or without, and it is not a personality trait. It is not a neurological lottery that some win and others lose. Focus is a discipline, a practice, a daily, deliberate, and sometimes brutally uncomfortable choice to direct the full weight of your mental energy at a single target. Refuse with almost violent intention to let anything pull you away. And in a world engineered from the ground up to splinter your attention into 1,000 useless directions, the ability to concentrate with genuine depth and sustained intensity is no longer just a competitive edge. It is the single most powerful separator between men who build empires and those who spend their lives watching others build them from the cheap seats of distraction and envy. Machiavelli was ruthlessly clear on this principle, though he expressed it through political strategy. A prince who pursues multiple objectives simultaneously masters none of them. A man who divides his forces divides his power. This is not ancient wisdom surpassed by modern complexity. It is eternal truth that has become exponentially more relevant in an age where your phone alone contains more distraction than entire centuries of human history combined. Every notification is a tiny assassination attempt on your concentration. Every mindless scroll is a withdrawal from the finite, irreplaceable bank of your mental energy. Every half-hearted effort, every project started and abandoned. Every goal held loosely because commitment feels dangerous. Each of these is a silent vote against your own potential. The terrifying thing is that most men cast these votes 100 times a day without ever realizing it. Here is what unshakable focus actually looks like in practice. Pay close attention, because this is where most people get it completely wrong. It is not the ability to sit perfectly still for hours in some idealized distraction-free environment. That is not focus. That is merely the absence of temptation. Real focus is the ability to lock in completely when the environment is chaotic, when the stakes are high, when the noise is deafening. And when every external signal tells you to disengage, to delay, to wait for a better moment that will never actually arrive, the man with genuine focus does not need perfect conditions. He forges his own circumstances. Within himself, he holds his surroundings. He can remain calm amid total disorder and work with the exactness and lucidity of a surgeon as his mind has been conditioned through steady, unremarkable daily habits to block out anything that doesn't directly support the single goal before him. This demands the intentional removal of everything that vies for your attention but doesn't earn it. And here, Machiavellian's stark rationality is crucial, because removal demands mercilessness. It forces you to examine your everyday routines, your social network, your consumption habits, your emotional pleasures, and your cozy diversions. Without any sentimentality, pose one question with ruthless truthfulness. Is this advancing my goal or quietly undercutting it? In the battle for your concentration, there is no middle ground. Each element in your life either hones your advantage or gradually and imperceptibly blunts it. Relationships that exhaust your energy with no exchange. Sever or restrict them without remorse. The media that amuses your intellect while depraving your drive. Swap it out without sentiment. The routines that seem benign because their harm builds gradually and unseen, take them apart before they take you apart. This isn't harshness, this is tactics. This is the Machiavellian insight that resources are limited. Time cannot be replenished, and a man who safeguards his attention secures his future. History's most concentrated individuals were not gifted with extraordinary focus. They were merely more ready than others to reject distraction, clamor, and mediocrity, and to refuse the constant societal push to be reachable, accommodating, and continuously dispersed. They recognized that each affirmative to something trivial was a denial of something significant. They protected their focus as a general protects his foremost tactical resource, for that is exactly what it is. Your focus is your power manifest. Its direction determines the course of your existence. Guide it with purpose. Guide it with exactness. Guide it with the detached ruling supremacy of a man who has resolved definitively and without remorse precisely who he is turning into and exactly what that transformation demands. Focus. The world won't pause if that resonated deep within you. Comment, I lock in, I level up below. No compromises. Fully committed. Point 6. The Machiavellian Code. How genuine power is forged in quietness and isolation. There is a reality about power that today's world has nearly entirely covered under a flood of performed achievements. Selected best moments and the urgent human craving to be recognized, approved, and cheered instantly. Here it is, stark and unvarnished. History's most formidable, most skilled, most truly influential men did not develop their might openly. They cultivated it in silence, in seclusion, during the lengthy, obscure, unappealing hours that went unseen. No one cheered, and no one was even aware of what was occurring. The demeanor you perceive, the calmness, the exactness, the hushed command that renders specific men unavoidable when they step into a room. That is only the outward manifestation of an internal structure that was built fully away from view. In the hidden battle of self-control that most men are excessively diverted, too hasty, or too dependent on outside approval to ever dedicate to waging, Machiavelli was not an individual who pursued the limelight. He was someone who examined it, who watched power from all perspectives. He analyzed the workings of human conduct with the detached accuracy of a surgeon and the forbearance of a hunter. A deeply significant yet frequently ignored observation of his is that a leader who exposes himself prematurely forfeits his key tactical edge. Enigma holds authority, quietness holds authority. This individual speaks solely when his words carry true substance and acts only when his actions fulfill a specific aim. He discloses only selected information and hides the remainder behind a facade of calm, inscrutable composure. He dominates any space he steps into without needing to speak louder or show his intentions. He remains engaged in the competition, but operates at a level that the majority of those present fail to recognize. This foundation is constructed in solitude, but not the kind born from seclusion, despair, or retreating from society and failure. Rather, It is the intentional, carefully guarded aloneness of an individual who grasps this principle. This directly and fully shapes the excellence of his external achievements. You find yourself in genuine solitude, free from distractions, from digital devices, from the ongoing social act that contemporary existence requires. You are compelled to face the most crucial connection of your life, the bond with your own consciousness. The majority of people dread facing this reality. They occupy any quiet moment with sound, since silence demands truthfulness, and they occupy every free instant with diversion. Since stillness requires introspection, they ensure they are always in company. Being alone forces them to endure the self-image they have painstakingly evaded. That self is fully aware of where rationalizations reside and where discipline has been counterfeited. It also recognizes the precise discrepancy between the persona shown publicly and the true person in private moments. A strategically clever thinker does not shy away from that encounter. He pursues it, remains in that unsettling quiet that exposes truths, and employs it as analytical information. It provides accurate, unvarnished insight into aspects requiring reinforcement, removal, and reconstruction from the ground up. This process is not about punishing oneself. It is about designing oneself. A deep and essential distinction exists. One person during isolation becomes overwhelmed by self-critique. The other person uses solitude to perform a detached, strategic evaluation of his personality, routines, and direction. The first is incapacitated by his discoveries. The second is energized by them. One emerges from quietude weaker, the other emerges keener. He emerges with a clearer and more dangerously driven mindset. Additionally, quietness imparts a lesson that no quantity of outside input can. It reveals your own inner frequency. Each person possesses a unique frequency, a fundamental alignment, a profound sense of purpose. This resides under the surface of societal demands, under the hopes of relatives and community norms. It also lies beneath a cacophony of varying views that perpetually attempt to define your identity and desires. Yet that signal is subtle. It does not broadcast loudly. It does not vie against the turmoil. It merely awaits with endless patience for you to become calm enough to detect it. And those individuals who perceive it, who remain in quietude sufficiently to locate that signal and synchronize their whole existence with it. These are the people who navigate life accompanied by a profound sense of direction, so deep and so resilient that no outside judgment, any short-lived obstacle, nor any societal influence can destabilize them. They are not propelled by external forces. They are motivated by inner conviction, and that internal momentum is based on authentic self-awareness and safeguarded by barriers of intentional isolation. This represents the most enduring and most formidable kind of authority a person can hold. Society will perpetually attempt to draw you away from yourself, toward reactivity, toward showmanship, into the tiresome drama of demonstrating your worth to individuals who are equally adrift. Machiavelli's response to that survey wasn't hostility, it was a calculated retreat. Turn inward, remain quiet. Construct in obscurity. Allow others to speculate about what you're building behind your calm, inscrutable gaze. Let them perceive your quietness as arrogance, enigma, or self-assurance. The label they assign is irrelevant. What counts is your actions while they chatter. You are constructing, refining, and evolving in the quiet and isolation that most are unwilling to embrace. The self that the clamor prevented you from discovering is ready. Go claim it. If that quiet spoke more powerfully than all else today, type "I build in silence, I emerge as power below." That's your seventh oath. Dark psychology, the art of reading people like a book while remaining unreadable. Listen carefully. Focus on what I'm going to share, because this part distinguished mental toughness is crucial, emotional composure is crucial, and unwavering concentration is crucial. Yet none of those traits achieve their full destructive capability unless combined with a skill most self-help material intentionally ignores. The capacity to interpret human nature with stark, relentless precision. The capacity to observe an individual, a gathering, a circumstance, and perceive beyond the superficial display, but rather the underlying mechanisms, the covert drives, the undisclosed plans, the anxieties, cravings, and vulnerabilities, which individuals constantly transmit via their actions, words, subtle facial cues, and particular methods of influencing those nearby. This isn't pessimism, it's insight. In a world where almost everyone acts from self-interest while feigning generosity, the person unable to see beyond the surface isn't virtuous. He's merely ignorant and thus perpetually exposed. Machiavelli's most contentious and often misconstrued insight into power was his unwavering refusal to assess human nature, as it ought to be instead of as it truly is. He didn't describe an ideal world he desired. He depicted the world that is proven, persistent, and historically present. A realm where people are mainly motivated by self-interest, where allegiance depends on benefit, where benevolence lacking power is seen as frailty and taken advantage of, and where the individual who acts, based on innocent beliefs about human virtue, will be outflanked consistently and ruthlessly by one who acts on realistic ones. This wasn't Machiavelli being malevolent. This was Machiavelli being candid in a manner that profoundly unsettled the complacent. That instinctive dismissal of his insights is itself a flawless illustration of the very self-deception he cautioned against. Dark psychology isn't about transforming into a predator. Let me clarify, because accuracy is crucial here. It's about making yourself untargetable. A core distinction exists between someone who learns manipulation to harm innocent individuals and one who studies it to detect it immediately and disarm it entirely, never being swayed by it again. The former is a predator. The latter is a sovereign. The route to sovereignty passes directly through a profound, unwavering, dispassionate comprehension of how people truly function when their facades drop, when their interests are jeopardized, their egos are wounded, and when they think nobody astute enough to observe is monitoring them closely. Here's what truly reading others demands at the highest tier. It demands first and foremost that you fully detach your own ego from the observation. A person who views others through the lens of personal wants, anxieties, and craving for approval perceives a warped image of himself. Instead of forming a precise image of the person before you, you need to practice detached observation. Apply the same cold, impartial accuracy a scientist uses on raw data. Focus on people's actions, not their words. Notice where their focus drifts when they think nobody is watching. Observe their behavior when the power balance changes, when the audience is different, or when the stakes go up or down. See who they turn into under stress compared to who they act like in a secure, comfortable setting. The gap between these two selves is where a person's true nature resides. The person who develops the skill to perceive that gap reliably, precisely, and free from self-deception has a deep understanding of human nature. This insight surpasses any academic degree or standard certification in all areas of life. Ensure you remain unreadable. This is the complementary practice, the reverse side of the same coin. As you cultivate clear vision into others, you must also build barriers around your inner self. Barriers so smoothly crafted, these barriers need to be kept up consistently and arranged strategically. Those trying to decipher you will only encounter the deliberately selected exterior you choose to show. This isn't about being insincere. It means having full authority over your own story. It means recognizing that details about your anxieties, aspirations, injuries, and vulnerabilities constitute strategic information. Sharing such information recklessly with those who haven't earned the privilege isn't being vulnerable, it's being exposed. Genuine vulnerability is a deliberate offering reserved for the deserving few. All the rest is protective gear. Put it on without regret and keep it up without any exceptions. The individual who observes everything while revealing nothing becomes the most formidable and shielded presence in any gathering. He is immune to manipulation because he spots the attempt before it takes shape. He remains unprovoked because he interprets provocation as a method, not a real danger. He cannot be fooled because he has honed his ability to detect the split between act and truth with instrument-level precision. Refined through years of detached, patient watching, he navigates society as water flows through stone, not by force, but with a persistent, exact, unavoidable intelligence that discovers every crevice and exploits it without revealing itself. Observe people without relent. Disclose yourself with intention. And never, ever confuse someone's act with their reality. If this has shown you something unforgettable, post "I see everything, I reveal nothing" in the comment section. Welcome to the next stage, number 8. The Iron Mindset, mastering the art of suffering gracefully and coming out tougher than before. All the concepts discussed up to now. That emotional control, unwavering concentration, intentional quiet, and the skill to perceive without being perceived, each and every tenet will face examination. All the thoughtfully built layers of this mental framework we've developed together will be put to the test. Not possibly, not later, not only when conditions turn adverse without fail, entirely, ruthlessly, and unexpectedly, because that's the way life is. Think of someone who has the courage to function above the easy, expected ordinariness that most accept and never escape. As you ascend higher, the resistance grows stronger and more fierce. It doesn't always originate from foes, though foes will appear, but from the very fabric of existence. It arises from grief, from defeat, from abandonment, by those you entrusted with pieces of yourself that can never be wholly regained. It stems from events that occur without reason or consideration for your efforts or your merit. Suffering is not a diversion on the journey to strength. It is the journey itself. The person who hasn't come to terms with this fact will shatter the moment the trail truly becomes tough. Machiavelli experienced this reality in a manner that most who cite him haven't truly understood. He wasn't someone who speculated about hardship while sitting in ease and security. They imprisoned him, tortured him, and took away everything he had built: his career, his influence, his position, his relevance. These political actors displayed the same cold ruthlessness that he had spent years analyzing and recording. So, how did he respond to that darkness? Through writing and thinking. He polished and converted the raw experience of his pain into the most incisive and lasting intellectual contribution of his entire time. Instead of letting his situation dictate his path, he employed it as a crucible. Stepping out of that crucible was something that centuries have failed to erode. This isn't resilience in a gentle, inspirational, quote manner. This represents the Machiavellian approach to pain: detached, goal-oriented, transformative. It's the insight that anguish isn't merely to be endured and dismissed, but to be internalized, utilized, and converted into lasting inner fortitude. Here's what it truly means to suffer effectively. The idea is straightforward, but carrying it out is among the most challenging endeavors a person can undertake. It demands, first of all, the total rejection of the question that feeble minds always pose when trouble emerges. The why question. Why do I have to go through this? Why at this moment? Why, after all I've already endured? That query isn't philosophical. It isn't deep. It's a snare, a mental cycle that wastes substantial mental effort while generating no progress whatsoever. The Machiavellian thinker doesn't ask why, but what. What does this circumstance truly demand from me? What can I gain from this experience that makes me more competent, more exact, more formidable than I was before it occurred? What strategic wisdom is concealed within this specific type of suffering that I could never have obtained unless I was compelled to undergo it? Transitioning from why to what isn't a minor shift in viewpoint. It's a thorough realignment of how you interact with hardship. It separates a victim of events from a learner of events. Learners eventually move forward, while victims remain stuck. The second essential for enduring pain well is the uncompromising refusal of the narrative that suffering attempts to force onto your sense of self. During the depths of an authentic crisis, when the loss is tangible, when the failure is witnessed by others, when betrayal goes straight to the core, a voice emerges in those moments with frightening certainty, declaring, "This is permanent. This defines who you are now. You are the version that will bear this burden endlessly. You will never fully heal. You have been fundamentally and permanently lessened by what occurred." That voice is neither knowledge nor truth. It's the mental counterpart of an injury at its most swollen, twisted, and deceptive condition. Making irreversible choices or embracing fixed identities based on that voice's testimony ranks among the most disastrous errors a person can commit in the crucial period right after a major setback. The Machiavellian reaction is to watch that voice with the same dispassionate analysis you'd apply to studying any adversary. Recognize its presence, but neither comply nor debate with it. Just keep creating while it talks, since action is the only communication that voice cannot endure in the long run. The third necessity, and possibly the most unexpected, is thankfulness, not the superficial online gratitude of counting perks when things are easy. Rather, a profound, almost intense gratitude for the hardship itself, for the particular pressure that this exact pain is generating within you. Diamonds are formed through compression, because the pressure that seems to be annihilating you is at the same time forging a resilience in your nature that no easy route could ever produce. Every individual who has ever achieved truly lasting strength possesses a repertoire of anguish that would shatter an ordinary person if they read it. Not in spite of that anguish, but because of it.